Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday at noon Eastern Time, and I am Barbie Winterbottom. I am the founder and CEO of the Business of HR. And today on the table, which is a program I facilitate every Tuesday at noon, I'm going solo today, y'all. Typically, I have one or more guests with me, and we talk about things anywhere from compensation to culture to values to talent acquisition, everything you can imagine that falls under the umbrella of people in the people space. Today, I wanted to spend some time with you talking about something that is near and dear to me. And I thought, based on a lot of the conversations I've seen and some things happening in the world and some work I'm doing with a few of my clients, I thought it was a good opportunity to kind of get back to the roots of some of the work that I do and why I created this company and what's important to me so that you all understand the why of what I do. And then perhaps maybe it can help you in your role as well. So some housekeeping for you. You'll see the ticker at the bottom. If you have questions or comments you'd like to make throughout the session, please send them through in the comments because I love to share them. Like Kevin, hi, how are you? Thanks for being here. I love to know who's out in the audience. So simply by saying hi makes me know you're there. So it's really important for me. Otherwise, I have no idea. And your questions are valuable. If you have a question, I guarantee you other people have a very similar, if not the exact same question. And I do my best to bring them across. Because I am solo today, I am working tech and the conversation. So forgive me if I am not making consistent eye contact with you throughout the session. I definitely like to do that whenever I can. Hi, Brian. Thanks for being here. But it's not always possible. So, hey, Terry, wonderful to see you. And Tanya and Bonnie, hey, you said you were going to be here. Thanks for keeping your word. That means so much to me. And Jaron, my heart, thank you for being here. You are such a special person, and I have thoroughly enjoyed getting to know you. And if you guys don't follow Jaron, I highly recommend you do. He represents an organization called Roots, and they work on bringing applications into your Slack channel. And I self-admittedly am not a Slack expert, but he was kind enough to explain it to me, and I was really impressed with the product there over at Roots. So definitely check him out if you're not already following. Okay, so to get to what we're talking about today, as many of you know, I've been in the people space or the human resources space for well over 20 years, and that makes me sound so old, and I hate that, but it is the reality. And one of the things I noticed throughout my career was that I would go to conferences, you know, the big annual conferences, 20, 30, 40,000 people, and sometimes even the smaller conferences or local HR group meetings, that type of thing. And I would get really inspired when I would hear the keynote speech or different breakout room speakers about these wonderful things they did within their organizations, or if they were a consultant, the wonderful results they drove for their clients. And I would always get so excited and want to get back to my office on Monday so that I could then do the same thing or bring those ideas to fruition within my organization. But what would happen is I would get back to my office on Monday morning and I would sit there and I'd be like, now what the hell do I do? Right? It's great to be inspired. And I love that we get inspired at the conferences. But what we often hear is the what, the outcome, the results. We typically, and if any of you have sat through a keynote speech, let me know. We hear about, here was the problem. Here's what we did. Here was the outcome, right? So we focus on the what, the issues and the outcomes. But what nobody ever really talks about is the how. How do you drive those results, right? How do you actually make that happen in your organization? And when we think about the certification programs that are out there for us as HR professionals, we we get the acronyms and the letters behind our names, and I've done it too. And they're usually about compliance, policy, adherence, litigation avoidance, right? Those are what they're fundamental, and I'm not dismissing their importance because we need to have that information. But again, nobody's telling us how to do the jobs we are entrusted to do. And so when I lost my job, I was a CHRO, and as a result of COVID, I lost my job, and I wasn't expecting it. It was a complete surprise to me. I came home that day and just sat for a while, and I thought, well, what am I going to do now? And I knew I wanted to, in the future, launch my own consulting firm. So I decided it was time to do it, because if you think back to May of 2020, nobody was hiring. People were being laid off, losing jobs. Millions of people around the globe had lost their jobs, and there wasn't anywhere for me to go. So I think the universe was telling me it was time to jump out of the nest and launch my company. So then I had to think, well, what am I going to call it? And I went through several versions of names, and something kept resonating with me. And it was this idea of how we do the work we do, and why we often hit roadblocks as we're trying to launch an initiative or transform something or introduce something new. And it hit me as I was thinking back over some of my experiences, that as I was taking over an HR team years ago, and I remember it like it was yesterday, but I was in a room, and the room was filled with people who were my direct reports. So directors, senior HR folks, HR BPs, anybody who was on my team. And I went around, and it was within my first few weeks of being there with the organization, and asked them some questions, because I was still in a learning phase, but I also wanted to understand what they knew about the company. So I started asking questions about, who are our top 5 competitors? Who are our top 5 customers? What is our largest profit margin on our products? What is our number 1 seller? What is our EBITDA goal? What is our annual revenue? And I started asking fundamental questions about the business, and no one in the room could answer me. There were a few guesses here and there, but no one could answer those fundamental questions. Who are our top 5 competitors? Of our top 5 clients, if we lost any one of them, what impact would that have on the business? What percentage of our business is driven by our top 2 customers? Is that a risk or is that a strength? I couldn't get answers from anybody about anything that had to do with the business. They were, one individual was like, well, I can tell you what our attrition rate is. Okay, that's great. But that's kind of table stakes when you're in the people space, right? When you're in the HR world, you should know that. Fundamentally, that's just a given. What I recognized very quickly is that we have insulated ourselves within the HR space to focus only on HR. And it's almost like we sit outside of the organization and we look in at the business versus us being immersed in the business and being a part of it. And hence the name of my company, The Business of HR, because it's so important that we not only are perceived as business leaders, but we approach the work we do and we think like business leaders. So then I took it a step further and I wrote an article, The 5 Imperatives for HR Professionals, what I believed were critical competencies, a methodology or a framework with which we approach the work we do. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The 5 imperatives for HR professionals, how to transform from someone who works in HR to being a business leader who works in the people space. So I will now change my banner here. So the first of the 5 imperatives is to be a business leader first and a functional leader second. And if you think about it, and if you're on LinkedIn at all, you've seen posts out there, HR is not your friend. HR works for the company. HR this, HR that. It's very easy to throw stones when you live in a glass house, right? So, or whatever that phrase is. HR isn't your friend. We are a business function, just like every other business function. Do we go to marketing to find friendship? Do we go to sales or finance or operations looking for friendship? Or do we go to those departments because they deliver a business-based service? We have to reframe the way in which we approach the work we do. And we have somewhere along the line confused being a service-oriented function with servitude. And I challenge each and every one of you watching this today to really sit back and think about yourself and the way you approach the work you do. Are you waiting to be told? Are you waiting for someone to ask you? Or are you assessing situations and driving business decisions and outcomes? Are you bringing forward concerns, questions, or reviewing information to say, hey, I've noticed this, and I did some research, and I pulled in some data, and here's what it tells me. And I think this is an issue we need to address, and here's some ideas I have on how we can do that. Or are you waiting for your business leaders to come to you to say, this isn't working, this is a problem, so-and-so is a performance issue, I need you to handle it? Where do you sit on that continuum of being an order taker and a transactional executioner versus being a leader who is driving outcomes, where you take ownership of everything within your space and within the people you support? So that's the first challenge, is to be a business leader first and a functional leader second. So let's break that down. And for any of you who want this, I have created an infographic of the 5 imperatives. I'm showing it here. You can find this infographic on my website if you go to businessofhr.com, and there's tabs at the top that say downloads. Go to the downloads tab, and this infographic is there for you. You can download it in a PDF form so that you can either follow along or you can print it out. You can give it to your teams, whatever. It's free. So please, I encourage you guys to all check out the website and the downloads. The website is under construction, so don't expect, perfection there, but the downloads work. So knock yourself out. So how do we become a business leader first who works in the people space? And I'm going to just read this for you so that we're on the same page. Know the language of your business. Understand your financials and your metrics. What are the metrics your CEO and COO and board use to measure the success or failure of your organization? To effectively serve your business, you must know what's important to your business leaders. So do you know your shareholder value? Do you know what is important to the board of directors? Do you know who's on your board of directors? Let's start there, right? Do you understand all of those mechanisms that exist that create the infrastructure for your business? And then do you know what the people at the executive level and the board level measure as far as success? That's key, critical number 1. Quickly, Alan, are these recorded? Yes, this will be recorded. I will post this to my YouTube channel and to LinkedIn when it's wrapped up. So yes, it is being recorded. So understanding the language of your business. Understand, what does your COO measure within the world of operations? Is it product volume? Is it efficiency? Is it quality? Are you in a service industry? Do you have a product, a hard product? Do you have hard goods, soft goods, combination of both? What are the elements within your organization that mean something to the business leaders you work with? And then take it a step further and think about how you fit into that picture. And reframing this for yourself first is so important, because if we see ourselves as the afterthought or the person the cleanup crew, right? And one of the things that makes me the most crazy is when I see HR people posting things that, we're the part-time attorney and therapist and event planner and birthday celebrator. No, stop. We're not. We're not a part-time anything. We are full-time business leaders who support the infrastructure of everything that touches the people within an organization. We are not half-assing anything. We are fully functional leaders with an expertise in the people space, and we have to take ownership of that. If we want people to treat us differently and respect what we do, we have to fully own it first, which means we have to speak their language. When we go into a meeting, we should be challenging people on what the topic of discussion is, on how does this impact the people of our organization? How are we measuring that? How are we explaining this? How are we communicating this? What message are you sending? Are you lobbing the ball over to such and such a department, or are you taking ownership for solving that issue or that customer issue on your own? Understanding how all these pieces fit together and driving those difficult conversations is part of the work we do. We've got to stop sitting there quietly in the corner waiting for someone to call on us. And I know that's uncomfortable for many of you. It was for me too at first. The more you start leaning into being that voice and taking ownership of the change, the more respected you will be, even at times when it feels uncomfortable. So understand the language your business leaders speak, adopt some of that language, and start seeking it out. Asking questions of your business leaders. What are they struggling with? And if they start talking about my turnover, okay, turnover is a symptom of something much deeper. Turnover is an outcome that's driven by something else. So take those conversations deeper. Ask them, why do you think people are leaving? Have you asked why your people are leaving? How are you measuring their performance? How are you delivering feedback? Let me sit with you during a coaching conversation. Perhaps I can help you with that. Start being the consultant they need you to be. Position yourself as that expert and not just the afterthought. So that's the first one, being a business leader first and a functional leader second. The second of the 5 imperatives, let me go back to my banners here, is to be agile and adaptable. So I ask this of everyone when I first start working with them, or if I'm doing a 5 imperatives workshop, which a shameless self-promotion here. If any of you watching are interested, I do facilitate day-long workshops on the 5 imperatives for HR teams and leadership teams. I can do them through Zoom or on site with your team. So if anybody's interested in taking this even deeper, please reach out. So be agile and adaptable. So one question I ask everyone when I'm facilitating these sessions is, this is a science statement. This is a principle in the world of evolution and biology and science. So this is not a Barbie made it up. This is a factual statement. Failure to adapt causes what? So any of you watching, I would love it if you would take a stab at the answer. Failure to adapt causes what? Does anybody know? I'll give you a quick second. Think back to your science classes when you were learning about earth science and evolution, all of those things. Think about Jurassic Park, perhaps. That's another thing that often gets people thinking about where this is going. Anybody have any ideas? Failure to adapt causes extinction. That is what happens in the world and as we evolve. As an HR professional, if we fail to adapt to the needs of our business and the people within our business, our function will become extinct because we will simplify ourselves to a point where we are simply transactional, right? Where we have no value other than what a computer can do. And we have so much more value. Yes, Leanna, you got it. Failure to adapt causes extinction. Good job. Fossils, Ivy, I love it. But yes, that is also true. So when we look at the world of business and the way things are going in the world of how organizations work, and we think about agile mentality and an agile approach and Six Sigma and lean and all of these methodologies, we have to look at the people work through that same lens. How can we be more agile and adaptable? Fundamentally, first and foremost, beyond anything else, we have got to stop being the HR policy police. We are not here to be policing everyone and catching people doing something wrong, or to wait until a leader comes to us and says, so-and-so's doing something, I need you to talk to them. If that's what you're doing, you are not being a leader and you are not evolving. You are an order taker who is perfectly positioning yourself to take the blame when something goes wrong and to not evolve into a leader within your organization. You will not earn the respect of your business leaders if you're simply waiting for them to come to you to tell you what to do. So being agile and adaptable is stop being the HR policy police, let go of rigid policy and the dogma of being the enforcer, because that's the reputation we have. I'm not sure if you guys are living in a bubble or not, but I poll my clients and the world of LinkedIn pretty frequently. And we don't have a great reputation out there, right? HR is not looked at with fondness in many places. And we've got to change that. We have allowed business leaders to position us as the bad guys to do their dirty work because they're either not courageous enough to do it themselves, they're not equipped, and they don't know how. Our job is to help them deliver those hard messages. It's our job to help them understand that being a leader versus a manager, because they're separate, being a leader means that there are times when you're going to be uncomfortable. We've got to help them understand how to deliver those messages. We have to guide them, and we need to help them respond, and we need to respond swiftly to internal and external events. If we think about the past year with COVID and with the social injustice and George Floyd's murder and Breonna Taylor and all of these just horrendous acts of violence that were senseless, much of this has landed in the laps of the human resources departments to make sense of for our employees. Without information, people will make it up for themselves. We have to give people a framework. We have to let them know what we think and believe. And I'm not saying politically. Please know, I'm not saying to share your political views within the workplace. I'm not. I would avoid that at all costs. However, the 2019 Edelman's Trust Barometer report stated in there, and I may get the percentage wrong, but I want to say it was like 76% of employees look to their employer as their source of truth for information that's happening in the world. And you may agree or not agree with that, but it is the reality. So we need to make a stand. We need to say to people, we believe in having an inclusive work environment where everyone feels like they belong. Their voices are heard. We see you for who you are. We have to go out and let people know that that's what we believe, and then we need to be truthful and make it happen. We cannot just sit by quietly and expect things to change on their own. So agility and adaptability means we have to look at our infrastructure. Are the processes user-friendly? Are we able to pivot quickly? We pivoted quickly during COVID, right? How many businesses said, our employees must be in the office. We cannot allow work from home. And then literally with the switch, a flick of a switch, everybody went home. So we have shown employees that we can do hard things and we can do hard things quickly. Now there's an expectation that we continue. So the agility is now an expectation. And it's so important. To have the right infrastructure to allow you to be agile is important. And when you're bogged down with rigid and volumes of policy and procedure, and if you have a 200-page handbook, it's too much. It's going to take you 6 months in an act of Congress to change a PTO policy or to change anything within your organization. So be as agile as you can be by minimizing the rigid construct. And I understand that that's really hard for some organizations. Many of my clients now, these organizations have been around for 50 years or more, and it takes time to move that needle. But if you're not initiating that and you're not challenging your company to look at things differently, you're not going to be able to make those changes. Having those difficult conversations, gathering data in order to help inform them is important, which takes us to the third imperative. So let me get back to the banners here so I can share it. Influence and inform. So the third imperative is to influence and inform. We have to use multiple elements in order to influence and inform the decisions of our organizations. So I'll read this one to you as well. We have to use data, experience, and instinct to help influence and inform business decisions, especially those impacting our people. We must validate and verify our data for accuracy, seek information from multiple sources, and listen to your gut. By leveraging all three, you will bring forward meaningful insights and ideas. And I'm reading this. Yes, I wrote this, but I am also reading it because I have a lot going on. So if you think about your life personally as well as professionally, if you've ever had that, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, or the hairs on your arm, or that gut feeling, and you've not listened to it, has it ever worked out for you? I'd be curious to know in the comments if any of you have ever had that instinctual message and you ignored it. Was ignoring it ever the right thing? I can tell you in my experience, it has never been the right thing. And over time, I have honed my instinct or my intuition because I fully believe that it's there for a reason. It is there to help guide us. When something doesn't feel right, it's not right. And we need to go deeper and understand what's not right about it. We also need to use data. Now, data in and of itself is not the be-all, end-all. And there are organizations that are, they live and breathe by data, and I am okay with that. However, when we're talking about people, data doesn't always tell the whole story. We know we can manipulate data to tell just about any story we want. And data, if you're not looking at it through multiple views, doesn't always tell you the full picture. Again, if we go back to, if we're simply looking at our attrition rate month over month over month, but we're not going deeper and getting underneath it, what is that really telling us? It's only telling us the number of people who are exiting our organization. But maybe some of that is good, right? Some organizations need more attrition. They need positive attrition. Some organizations need lower attrition. So it's just a data point. We must combine the data with our instinct and our experience. So the three elements for influencing and informing decisions is, to me, the trifecta is data, your experience within the organization, your experience at other organizations, your experience out in the world of your education or research you've done. So it's instinct, data, and experience. That is, I believe, the trifecta of really being able to influence and inform the decisions of your organization, because that is our role. Our role is to help influence and inform decisions through the lens of the people impacted by those decisions. So if we are not taking all of this into account when we're in those meetings and using our voices to say, hey, this is not making sense. I know you want to make that decision. I know you want to require people. Think of something. I saw just the other day, a leader said to all of his exempt employees, you need to know you're expected to work at least 55 hours a week as an exempt employee. If you're an HR person in that room and you're not speaking up saying, wait a minute, hold on, that's not making a lot of sense to me. Where's this coming from? Let's talk about this offline a little bit more. That is not a policy. And let's flesh this out so I can understand what you're trying to drive here. You're going to then go back and say, okay, my gut said that was wrong, so I had to speak up. My experience and my knowledge tells me that that's not the right thing to do, because the FLSA is what determines someone being exempt or non-exempt. And as an exempt employee, you're measured on your results, not on the hours you work, right? And the data tells me that people working over X number of hours actually get diminished returns on their productivity. So let's talk about all of this, right? So you've got to bring in reasonable arguments for people, again, speaking the language of their business, but using your gut instinct, data, and your experience to tell the story of why things need to be different, why you recommend something change. So helping them reframe it is incredibly important. And you can't just go willy-nilly out there because it's something that you want to do, because you will be perceived as lacking credibility. But if you go in using tools that they would use to influence a decision, now you're speaking their language. Now they're going to pay attention to you. And it's not just an HR thing. It's now a business thing. And that's what will get their attention. All right. So number 4 is to create practical solutions. And what I mean by practical, I mean as simple as possible, intuitive as possible, and practical. Making sure we are solving the actual challenges that our organizations are facing. And we're not just implementing something because it's the newest, greatest HR thing on the market. And I went to a conference and I heard about this, and so I want to do it, right? How many times have we changed a process or a policy or a program or a tool because it was the cool thing to do or the newest technology out there, but it really didn't solve any business problems. It didn't move the needle forward. It didn't change anything. We just swapped out one thing for another. That doesn't make sense to me. And we lose a lot of credibility in doing that. So creating practical solutions, find what your leaders and your people need and be proactive in bringing solutions forward. Simplicity and customer experience must be at the forefront, ensuring our focus is always on making a positive impact. So understand that our employees are whole people, right? Our employees are more than just a one-dimensional person. And we often our mind shifts a little bit. We see people out in the world and we see them as whole people. They become an employee and now all of a sudden they're a one-dimensional, they're like Flat Andy, right? They're an employee now. And they're so much more than an employee. And we have to think about their user experience or their customer experience. When we think about how we enroll people in benefits or how we administer learning, how we help people grow their careers, the internal recruiting process, the performance evaluation process, the way we communicate, all of these different things, we often fail to look at the user experience. And we put things in place for reasons of compliance, for reasons of the HRIS system we have, and it has to be this way. There's all of these factors that we take into account. And often the last thing we think about is the user and their experience. As an example, how many of you during orientation have your employees fill out paper, literally paper, for their direct deposit, for their emergency contact, for their address, and then they hand that piece of paper over to someone in HR, and that person enters the data into the HRIS system? I know you're out there. I know you're doing it because I see it every day. And when I challenge folks, why are you doing that? I usually get the answers, what if it's wrong? What if they enter the wrong direct deposit information and then they don't get their check? What if? These folks are very sophisticated consumers. They are likely banking on their phones, ordering from Amazon every day, ordering groceries to be delivered, paying all of their bills, communicating with loved ones and people they know around the globe, all on this little device. And yet we don't trust them to enter their own information into a system. Why do we do that? Is it because we have a need for control? Are we so fear-based and fear-driven that if there's a mistake and somebody doesn't get their check, we're going to be blamed for it? We need to build an infrastructure that is as simple as possible and intuitive as possible and allows people to have as much ownership and control over their experience as possible. And we've got to stop hand-holding and spoon-feeding people. Spoon-feeding employees creates infants. And if you're a parent, You know, you don't want that kid to be an infant forever. You want them to grow up to be independent, self-sufficient adults. And that's what we want to do in the workplace. We want self-sufficient, empowered employees. And yet, at the same time, we treat them like children. We've got to stop. We need to allow them to make mistakes. And you know what? If they don't get their paycheck, I guarantee you they're going to go in and update their information so that it's right. Yes, there will be mistakes. It will happen. It will likely not be anything you can't correct quickly. So understand, people need to be treated like the adults they are, and we need processes and systems and tools to allow that to happen. Hello, Mary from Gastonia. Good to have you here. All right, so the fifth imperative is be courageous. And this is so important, and it touches everything we do. Let go of the fear culture. And that's a hard one. I get it. It is a hard one. We walk that tightrope of serving employees and company all the time. And that is inherently what I believe has created this fear culture. Be wholehearted in all you do. Every conversation, every email, and every interaction takes courage and commitment to doing what's right. Not always what's easy, but what's right. HR professionals have a responsibility to challenge, protect, and lead in ways that ensure alignment to values, equality, equity, inclusion, and create a sense of belonging. We have to be the voice for people who may not have their own. We have a unique opportunity to make sure that everyone in an organization is seen, heard, valued, and understood. That is what all people want. People understand they're not going to get everything they're asking for. I don't think there's an employee on the planet who thinks that they are truly entitled to a salary that's 10 times more than they're making, or that they get as much time off with pay as they could ever want. People are not as unrealistic as we make them out to be. Are there outliers? Yes, there are outliers. There will always be outliers. But don't create an environment based on your outliers. Create an environment for the 90% of the people who come to work every day wanting to do a good job, wanting to be recognized, wanting to be heard, and have a sense of belonging. And then you manage the outliers as necessary. And I think we've gotten it backwards. We've created rigid policy and construct and systems because of the what if this does this and this does this and this person goes rogue and this person challenges this. Those things are always going to happen. But instead of creating an infrastructure of ownership and wholehearted connection, we've created infrastructures that separates people and creates rigid construct. And that's not who we are. But that's what we've created. And that has also led to the reputation of HR is not your friend, because we're seen as rigid policy police. So by being courageous and challenging ourselves first and our own mindset, our own thought processes is the first step in how we can start to influence and change our organizations. And it's hard. Taking a look in the mirror is often very difficult. And, you know, Dr. Brene Brown, I'm a huge fan of hers. If any of you follow Dr. Brown, I encourage you. If you don't, if you do, then we're super like-minded. But there's a poster and it's right there on my wall. And I look at it every day. And it's, you can choose courage or you can choose comfort, but you cannot have both. And as folks who work in the roles we work in the people space, this is so, so true. You can have courage or you can have comfort, but you cannot have both. It takes courage to step out and challenge an executive who was disrespectful to an employee. I know because I've done it before. I've pulled a CEO aside after a town hall and said, you cannot make fun of so-and-so's size publicly in a forum. It's disrespectful. You shouldn't make fun of anyone ever. But especially as the CEO of this organization, you cannot poke fun at someone's weight, height, or size ever again. Stop it. You're not in a frat house. These are not your buddies at a keg party. You are the CEO of an organization, and you have to treat people with respect. And I walked out. I left it there. I didn't coddle him or her, because I don't want to disclose who it was, and make them feel better. I wasn't there to make them feel better. I was there to bring something to their attention. If you see people being treated poorly, if you know there's an issue with a lack of diversity, if you have a homogenous population, if you know people with Black and brown skin are being treated differently in this certain area of your business, it is your responsibility to address that with the individual and with the organization. And sometimes that's really hard. And I do understand you're walking the tightrope because you're an employee too. You could lose your job, but it's what we're there to do. If you don't have the courage to have those really difficult conversations, then you're in the wrong job. And that's not a bad thing. Sometimes we have to look at ourselves and decide, is this the right path for me? And maybe it's not. And that's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person. It just means you're choosing something else. But take a hard look at yourself and your values and what means the most to you. And are you able to live that in your role as an HR professional? And if you're not, that's okay. But you should make the choice to find something else. Don't be in this job and do it without courage. You will be part of the problem if you do. And I don't want to sit here and be preachy, guys. I really don't, because I love everyone who works in this space. It's hard. The work we do is hard. Everybody thinks anybody can be in HR, and that's not true. We have to change that. We are business professionals who have courage and have the hard conversations. We have to push back. We have to hold our ground. We have to set boundaries. That's a whole nother conversation that we can have, but we've got to set healthy boundaries. And when people cross them, they are accountable for that. We take ownership of what we do, and we give ownership where it belongs to others, and we hold them accountable. And if any of you guys are interested in setting boundaries within the HR space, let me know, because I can do another one of these sessions around that. And I have some really great examples that can help frame it for you. But it's so, so important that we hold strong to who we are, and we let everyone else know that we are not going to compromise on doing what's right simply because it's easier. So that is the 5 imperatives. I'm going to review them again very quickly for everyone. I tried to get through it as fast as I could so that if you did have questions, we had a few minutes left. So the first is be a business leader first and a functional leader second. Be agile and adaptable. Influence and inform. Create practical solutions, and be courageous. It's just, it sounds simple. It's not. Each and every one of these 5 imperatives takes a lot of dedication, a lot of commitment, and a lot of courage to execute. All of this is underpinned by trust. If you're in an environment where you don't trust each other or yourself to do what's right, then you need to question why you're there. And maybe it's not the right organization for you. Maybe you need to find an organization that is more aligned with who you are. Or maybe you take on the challenge of transforming that organization, which is a heavy lift, but it's what our organizations and people deserve if you're ready for the challenge. So if any of you guys have any questions for me, I would be happy to answer them. Again, if you are interested in the infographic of the 5 imperatives, go to businessofhr.com, go to the downloads page, and you can download the infographic. I believe the ebook on the 5 imperatives is there as well, where I go into a lot more detail and application. And there's several other things there. I think there's probably about 12 or 15 different downloads. So feel free to download any of that if you're interested. So here quickly, Leanna says she would love the boundary session. Okay, I will make sure we do that. Ivy, yes, please. Yes, please. What? Tell me what you'd like. Yes, please. And I will see if I can do it for you, because I lost track here. So I'm not sure what you were asking for. All right, guys. Well, it is 12:44. I left time so that we could have some interaction and questions. If you don't have any questions, we can wrap it up early. If you do, make sure you send them now. I know there's a bit of a lag and a delay in when you submit them and when I see them. So go ahead and use the chat if you have a question. If not, then we will go ahead and wrap it up. Sorry, I know I'm not looking. Oh, Ivy would like more on boundaries. Okay, got it. Boundary session. I'll put it on the docket for one of our upcoming live sessions. And thank you, Bonnie. I would make a fantastic mentor. I truly appreciate that. I do coach people. My practice has several different areas. I do coach HR professionals. I coach individuals as well as teams. I offer consulting and advisory services, kind of that adjunct CHRO where I offer people strategy. And I'm also doing a lot of work with talent acquisition transformation and how it connects to culture and building the culture of the future. Because there's so much of our employee experience starts at the very top end of the funnel, which is attraction and then selection and onboarding and all of those pieces. So that's just some of the work I do. But thank you, Bonnie. I appreciate that so much. And you guys are amazing. Thank you for the feedback. It does my heart good to know you're out there and listening and that you care and that you're finding value in some of this, because I love doing these shows. I think it's really fun to connect with people I wouldn't normally see. And so wonderful. And Alan, yes, if you want to reach out to me on Messenger, we'll schedule some time to chat. So with that, thank you guys. I am so happy you were here. I really appreciate your time. Any suggestions for shows in the future, go ahead and message me through LinkedIn. I check that pretty frequently, so I would be more than happy to take your suggestions there. Feedback, comments, what have you. And I wish you all a very wonderful week. As soon as the show wraps up, the system will download it and it will push it out to LinkedIn, but I will also download it and then upload it to my YouTube channel so that you can find it. One of the hardest things is to find a session that you missed by scrolling through LinkedIn and trying to find it. So one of the things I do is I try to pin it to my featured items on my LinkedIn profile. And then I also post it to my YouTube channel, which is the Business of HR. So through those two mediums, if you want to share the session with your team or with others, you can certainly find it there and do so. Or you can always reach out to me and I can send you a link to the YouTube channel once I get the video uploaded. All right, guys, thank you. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you, Ivy. Thank you, Bonnie. Wonderful to have you guys here. And with that, I'm going to sign off. Bye-bye.